It was the kind of silence that comes right before the world shatters. Not the kind of silence you sleep through, the kind that wakes you, thick, heavy, like the air itself knew. Something evil was on the way. Elijah didn't know what time it was when the banging started. Could have been midnight. Could have been 3 in the morning. Didn't matter. All he knew was that something cold slid down his spine as soon as he heard it. That knock. No. That pounding. The kind that didn't wait for answers. He was just 14, laying in a bed that creaked when he breathed hard. Cotton sheets still damp from the July heat. But that night, he froze. His mother was already at the door when he crept down the hallway, her voice shaking. Please, he didn't do nothing. Please don't take him. That's when Elijah saw them. 4 white men, one in a sheriff's badge, the other 3 in plain clothes, but nothing about them was plain. They had rope, they had rage, and they had no fear of being stopped. And his father didn't fight. Not because he was weak, not because he was guilty, but because he knew the truth. He knew how Mississippi worked in 1965. You raise your voice, you die faster. That was the rule. They dragged him out of the house like he was already dead. Elijah ran after them, barefoot, heart punching his ribs, his mother screaming behind him. But the men didn't even turn around. They weren't hiding. They didn't have to. There was a tree, big old oak, right outside the pasture. Its roots had been there longer than any of them. But that night, it wasn't just a tree. It was a weapon. They didn't say why, but they didn't have to. Everybody knew. Elijah's father had organized a meeting, just 5 neighbors. They gathered in the back room of a church to talk about voting. That's all. Just voting. And for that, they called him a threat. They strung him up in silence, like it was just another night. Elijah stood there. No shoes, no words, just eyes wide, face frozen, as his father's body swung in the dark. The rope creaked like it had done this before. One of the men turned to Elijah, spit on the ground, then said, "You people forget your place too often." That was it. No trial, no explanation, just blood on the grass and silence from the law. By morning, the tree was still standing. So was the rope. Sheriff didn't show up until noon, not to investigate, not to question, just to say, a shame he had to learn the hard way. And he left. No one was arrested. No one even lost a job. Elijah and his mother buried his father under that same tree, same dirt, same roots. She cried so hard her body gave out. Elijah just stared, couldn't cry, couldn't scream. His voice was gone, and when neighbors asked what happened, they whispered, because fear does that. It teaches people to lower their voices, even when they're right. For days, the blood stain wouldn't come out the soil. Rain came, still wouldn't leave, like the ground itself was grieving. And Elijah, he stopped talking for a while, went to school with a clenched jaw, came home to a house full of ghosts. He'd walk past that tree every day, the same one that stole his father, the same one that cast a shadow over their porch. That shadow never moved, not even when the sun did. He grew up with it. That tree became part of him, a reminder, a scar carved into wood. The town never spoke of it again. The white folks acted like it never happened, like his father just vanished, like it was normal. But Elijah never forgot. He couldn't. Every time he saw a white man laugh aloud, or a cop drive by too slow, or a rope hanging in a shed, something twisted in his stomach, something old, something quiet, but angry and deep. Down, beneath all the silence, one thought stayed with him, not shouted, not even whispered, just held tight behind the teeth of a broken boy who'd seen too much too soon. One day, I'll make sure they remember. This is Mark Joie, and you're watching Injustice Browning. If this story moves something in you, subscribe, comment below, speak the names they tried to erase. Let them echo, because silence is how they got away with it the first time. They say if you dress the part, they'll let you in. Elijah wore that suit like armor, dark navy, pressed sharp, buttoned to the throat, tie always straight, shoes shine, not because he liked it, because it kept people from asking questions, or at least the wrong ones. It was 1993. Atlanta was growing, sky rising, highways stretching. White folks like to say it was a new South, but Elijah knew better. It just looked cleaner on the outside. The inside hadn't changed much at all. He was 40 to now, worked as a school administrator in a mostly white district. Polite folks, polished smiles. They'd shake his hand, then triple-check his credentials behind his back everywhere he went. He felt it, the double take, the delay, the way security always took an extra step when he walked into the room, the way a mother clutched her purse tighter when he passed in the hallway. He'd speak carefully, always, calm tone, open hands. But the moment he disagreed just once, he'd hear it. You don't need to be so aggressive. He'd smile, say nothing, swallow the lump dot, but at night, when the tie came off and the front door clicked shut, he was just a man trying to keep the storm off his son's shoulders. Marcus was 12. Bright kid, quick, loved reading about Thurgood Marshall and Malcolm X, said he wanted to be a lawyer someday, said he wanted to make change. Elijah listened, nodded, but deep down, he was afraid change cost his father his life, and Atlanta might have had tall buildings and fancy words. But Elijah knew the rules still hadn't changed. Not really. He told Marcus things in whispers, like secrets, warnings passed down from men who survived long enough to speak them. Don't talk back, even when you're right. Keep your hands where they can see them. Don't run, ever. And then, softer, they'll try to break you without leaving a bruise. Sometimes Marcus would ask, why do they hate us? Elijah never had a clean answer, only silence, then a slow exhale, like he was trying to let go of something he never could. He never spoke about Mississippi, not out loud, but the memory sat behind his eyes, like a second set of vision. Every time he saw a tree to wide or a rope in a maintenance closet, it came rushing back. That night, that blood, that silence, even in Atlanta. He'd flinch when he heard the wrong kind of knocked out, but Elijah had learned something since then. He'd learned how to play the game, smile when he wanted to scream, laugh when the joke was on him, speak like he didn't carry ghosts in his chest. And people bought it, thought he was safe, one of the good ones. They said things like, you're not like the others, and expected him to take it as a compliment. He did what he had to do, but it wore him down. Sometimes he'd sit alone on the porch, late at night, after Marcus had gone to bed. He'd light a cigarette, though he never smoked it. Just let it burn between his fingers, and he'd whisper to the dark, I'm still here, Daddy. One afternoon, after a school board meeting where he'd been spoken over by a man half as smart, but twice as white, Elijah went home and stared at himself in the mirror. Same face, new suit, but underneath, same boy, same fists, same vow. He couldn't tell Marcus the whole story, not yet, but he knew one thing. His son couldn't walk through life unarmed. So he gave him tools, books, knowledge, sharp words, calm fire. And when Marcus talked about being a lawyer, Elijah told him the truth. They won't want you there, son, but you go anyway. You sit in that courtroom and you speak like you belong, even when they pretend you don't. Marcus looked up at him, eyes wide, full of fire, like you do, Dad. Elijah smiled, quiet, not proud, just tired. Yeah, he said, like me, but deep down, he hoped Marcus would be stronger than him, not just survive the game, but change it. Still, every time Elijah passed a tree with roots too deep, his chest tightened. And every time a white man smiled too wide, he remembered the rope. He walked through life with a suit on his back and a scream in his throat, but he never let it show. Because in their world, being loud got you killed, but being silent kept you breathing. For now, there's a different kind of silence in a courtroom, one that doesn't belong to justice. It belongs to power, to history, to lies dressed in robes and polished shoes. Marcus knew it well. He was the first black attorney in his county's public defender office, and they let him know it every single day. Not always in words. Sometimes it was the way a judge looked past him, like he was furniture. Sometimes it was the way a prosecutor smirked when Marcus stood to object, knowing the objection would be overruled before the first syllable finished. They told him the robe didn't see color, but Marcus saw the way the robe leaned in when his white colleagues spoke, the way jurors followed every word of a white attorney's opening statement, and barely looked at him. He was clean, crisp, always prepared, but the courtroom didn't care. It was 2012. America was still pretending we were past all that. Post-racial, they called it, but Marcus lived inside the lie. He felt it every time a police report came in with holes big enough to fall through, and no one cared. Then came Jamal. 19, no priors, quiet kid. He was walking home from his shift at the grocery store when a white woman screamed in the parking lot, said she'd been hit, didn't get a good look, said he was wearing a hoodie. That was enough. The cops showed up and tackled Jamal before he could say his name, slammed his head into the pavement. Body cam footage caught the first minute, then cut out. Later, they said it malfunctioned. The officer's story changed 3 times. Jamal cried when Marcus visited him in jail. "I didn't touch nobody," he said. "I was just trying to go home." Marcus believed him. The evidence was thin. The story didn't add up. He thought, "I can win this. This is the one." He worked it day and night, pulled every document, cross-examined every officer, fought like hell. But the white woman sat on the stand and said, "I don't remember exactly, but it was him, I think." That was all the jury needed. Guilty. 6 years. No record. No weapon. No video. Just skin. Marcus didn't cry in the courtroom. He waited until the hallway, until the boy's mother collapsed into a chair, hands shaking, asking how. He couldn't answer. Outside, in the cold wind of that parking lot, he finally called his father. It took him a moment to get the words out. They convicted him. Dad, for nothing. On the other end, Elijah didn't say much. He didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't say, "That's how they are." He just let the silence hold them both. And then, "This country don't love you, son, but I do, and you keep fighting." Marcus wanted to scream, to quit, to burn the whole thing down. But he knew Elijah hadn't made it this far just for him to stop now. He'd made it through 1965, through a life of being smiled at and spit on in the same breath. Elijah had survived, so Marcus could walk into that courtroom and speak the truth even if they refused to hear it. Still, something broke that day. Not his belief in the law, but in the people who used it like a hammer. From that point on, Marcus didn't try to impress the room. He didn't tailor his tone or soften his fire. He spoke sharp, clear, loud. He stopped trying to be accepted. And he started daring them to look away. The law was supposed to be blind, but Marcus knew now it only closed his eyes when a black boy was standing in front of it. He still saw Jamal's face when he went to sleep, still heard his voice in that cold visiting room. "I didn't touch nobody." 6 years for a ghost crime, and no one blinked. Marcus didn't quit, but something in him hardened. A piece of him went quiet. Not defeated. Just colder. Sharper. They wanted him to bend, but he was his father's son, and Elijah didn't raise a man who would kneel except to lift somebody up. You could feel it before you saw it, that shift, like the country had been holding its breath for decades. It finally exhaled through fire. It was May 2020. George Floyd was murdered in the street, on camera, with a knee on his neck and the world watching, and suddenly, what had been whispered in kitchens and barbershops and Sunday morning pews for generations was screaming in the streets. Marcus didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. He sat in the dark with his phone lit up, watching the video over and over, rage curling in his stomach like smoke. He thought about Jamal, about his father, about every courtroom where truth meant nothing and skin meant everything. By morning, Atlanta was marching. Marcus didn't come to hold a sign. He came to speak. He stood on the steps of the courthouse, the same building that chewed up kids like Jamal, and he let the truth out of his chest. His voice shook. Then it steadied. Then it burned. They killed George because they could. Like they killed my clients. Like they killed my dreams in that courtroom. Like they killed my grandfather under a tree. The crowd went silent. Then it roared. People were crying, clapping, nodding, repeating his words back to him like scripture. Then the cops came. Helmets, shields, batons. One officer shoved Marcus so hard he nearly hit the pavement. Another looked him in the face and called him boy. For a second, it felt like 1965 again, but this time the crowd didn't back down. Hands reached out, lifted Marcus up, stood between him and the line of riot gear, young and old, black, white, brown, all of them shouting the same name, George Floyd, George Floyd. Tears spilled from his eyes, not from pain, from recognition. He looked around and saw something he'd never seen before. Hundreds of people standing with him, not for charity, not for image, but for truth. They were tired, and they were done asking nicely. A small elder woman pushed through the crowd, wrinkled hands, blue scarf, strong eyes. She pressed a folded paper into his palm. He opened it. One line. "You are your ancestors' answer." He couldn't move for a moment, could barely breathe. That night, the news ran clips of the speech. Elijah saw it from his living room, remote trembling in his hand. He hadn't cried in years, But that night, he let go. He saw himself in his son's voice. He saw his own father's face in the crowd. He saw the fight still alive in another corner of the crowd. Jamal stood quietly, older now, out of prison, face hardened by years lost, but eyes locked on Marcus with something close to pride. He had come to march for himself, for who he could have been, for the teenager they tried to erase. They walked side by side now, shoulder to shoulder. And behind them, the candles. People had started placing them beneath an old oak tree in the park. They didn't know the full story, but somehow they felt it. Dozens of names written on cardboard signs. Emmett Till, Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, Oscar Grant, George Floyd, all laid at the roots. Someone tied a sign to the trunk. We remember. Marcus stood before that tree the next morning, alone this time. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. The wind carried the sound of footsteps, chants, sobs, a storm of voices rising from centuries of silence. And that tree, the one that had watched a man hang in 1965, the one Elijah had flinched at for most of his life, it was still standing. But now, it wasn't just a witness to pain. It was a gathering place, a place where history met the moment. Where silence met its reckoning. Marcus touched the bark, closed his eyes. He thought of his grandfather, of the rope, of the soil that never forgot. And then he whispered, "They hear us now." Not all of them, but enough to shake the ground. Elijah died in his sleep on a Sunday morning. No hospitals, no machines, just quiet, the kind of passing you only get when your body has already survived too much. Marcus found him still, with the TV humming low and a half-read book in his lap, one hand resting on his chest, like he was holding something in. After the funeral, simple, quiet, no suits, just people. Marcus stayed back to clean out the house. He opened drawers that hadn't been touched in years, boxes with faded tape, old clothes that still held the scent of cedar and tobacco. And then, the letter. It was folded inside a Bible, pages worn thin, ink almost bled through. Dated July 10th, 1965. Written in a rough, shaky hand, one he'd never seen before. His grandfather's name signed at the bottom. "Elijah, if you're reading this, something's gone wrong. I don't know if I'll come back tonight, but I want you to know I love you, and you must keep going. They'll try to break you. They'll lie and smile while they do it. But you hold on, son. You remember who you are. You remember we are not less. We are just bound in chains they pretend not to see. If they take me, don't let them take your fire. Don't let them take your voice. One day, you'll tell our story." Say it loud. Marcus didn't make it past the last line before breaking. He sat on the floor, letter pressed to his chest, sobbing in a way he hadn't let himself since law school. It all made sense now. The silences, the stare, the careful way Elijah taught him to move through the world like a man walking across glass. His father had carried this pain for a lifetime and never said a word. 2 days later, Marcus returned to the tree, the same. Still standing, still watching. This time, he wasn't alone. Word had spread. People came, friends, strangers, protesters. Jamal, the elder woman with the blue scarf. Marcus stood under the branches and held the letter in both hands. Then he read. His voice cracked. But he didn't stop. And when he finished, he didn't fold the letter away. He looked up at every face and said, "My grandfather was lynched right here. They called it justice. My father was forced to clean his blood from the soil. They called it peace. I was told to stay quiet, to keep my hands low and my voice lower. They called it professionalism, but I'm not quiet anymore. This is our story, all of it, not just the parts they put in books, but the blood, the fear, the fight. We were never the problem. The silence was. No one clapped. They just stood there. Some cried. And for the first time in his life, Marcus felt what his father never got to feel. Peace. Not the kind they hand out after they've broken you, but the kind you earn when you finally speak what they tried to bury, out loud. Where the world can hear it. 2 years passed. The oak tree still stood, same thick trunk, same wide arms. But something was different now. There was a plaque at its base, bronze, weathered already by rain. It didn't hide behind soft words or whitewashed history. It told the truth. On this ground in 1965, a man named Samuel Porter was lynched for organizing black citizens to vote. His son, Elijah, was forced to clean the soil where his father bled. For decades, The truth was buried. Today, we remember it. That plaque wasn't easy to get. Took petitions, protests, pressure. The city didn't want to admit it, but the people, especially the young, wouldn't let it go. Truth has a way of rising when enough voices shout at once. Now, every week, someone leaves something at the tree, flowers, notes, pieces of chalk with names written across the roots. And Marcus teaches now. He's not in a courtroom anymore. He's in a classroom on the south side. Small, cracked windows, scratched up, desks, but every chair is filled. Black students, brown students, broke kids, tired kids, angry kids. Kids who walk and carrying the same weight he once held in his chest. He looks them in the eye, every one of them, and he says, "My grandfather died trying to vote. My father spent his life playing their game. I almost broke trying to beat their system. But you are not broken. You are the future." Some of them don't believe it. Not yet. They've seen too much.